Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer, thanks to Chase Guida for this one. Amy plays a semester's end, targeting two of her grizzly bears. Nick doesn't want those bears to leave the battlefield and return with +1/+1 counters, so he plays an Aethersnatch against the semester's end. What happens if Nick controls no creatures or planeswalkers of his own? What if Nick has one creature or planeswalker that he wants to exile, but another that he doesn't? Alright, so the first thing that we want to do is take a close look at the wording on Aethersnatch, and we can see that it lets you choose new targets for the spell. Now, according to the comprehensive rules, that process includes a couple of different possible things that Nick can do. Of course, it would be possible for Nick to change any of those targets to something else. Now, because the semester's end specifies that it has to be a creature or planeswalker he controls, that would have to be something that he chooses. It's not going to be possible for him to change any of the targets to something that's not legal. Now, the other option that you can see here is that Nick could also leave any number of those targets unchanged, and he's going to have that option available to him even if those targets are not legal at the moment. He's also going to have that option even if it would have been possible for him to change those targets to something that would have been legal. So that's the answer to the first part of our question. Nick would be able to just have both of the targets for grizzly bears stay and not do anything to them. When the semester's end tries to resolve at that point, its targets are going to be two creatures that Amy controls, even though Nick is the person who controls the spell. Because the targets are not controlled by the same person, that means that they're not legal, and the spell is not going to be able to resolve because none of its targets are legal. It's just going to be put into Amy's graveyard. So Nick can accomplish pretty much all of what he wants. But let's say that he wants to get a little bit of extra value out of this spell. Let's say that he has, for example, a planeswalker that he does want to exile and return so he can get some extra loyalty on it. Would it be possible for him to do that? And the first way that we might want to do this would be for us to just choose one target for the spell. And it's not going to be possible for us to change the number of targets that we're targeting. To see why, we'll bring up that definition of what it means to choose new targets again, and we'll notice that it doesn't say anything at all about changing the number of targets. That is set up at the time when the spell gets cast. And even though it's possible for Amy to choose any number of targets when she's casting it, she chose two. That means that when Nick is choosing new targets, it's not going to be possible for him to annul all of those and choose only one target. Whatever Nick ends up with, he's going to also need to have two targets for the semester's end, even though that might not necessarily correspond with your intuition of what it should mean when you choose new targets for something. The good news is that it is going to be possible for Nick to change one of the targets from a creature to a planeswalker. That's because the specific phrase that Semester's End uses is target creature or planeswalker you control. Now, a grizzly bear's is a creature or planeswalker, and Nick's planeswalker would also be a creature or planeswalker. So both of those objects fit under that same umbrella term that the card uses to decide what type of targets it's looking for. And so accordingly, because Nick is trying to put something new in that still fits the same description as what he's replacing, that is going to be a possible play. Not all cards are worded in the same way, and there's definitely some ways that Wizards has worded cards in the past where this trick would not work, so be sure to read the cards very carefully every time. With that being said, it is going to be possible for Nick to leave one of the targets as the grizzly bears, and for him to take one of the grizzly bears targets and change it over to his planeswalker. Let's see what would happen if this was what he did. So, when the game tries to resolve the semester's end now, it's going to see something kind of interesting. One of the targets, Nick's planeswalker, is a creature or planeswalker that Nick controls. So that's going to be okay. However, the other target, Amy's grizzly bears, is not. Because the spell has one legal target and one not legal target, that means that the spell is able to resolve as much as it possibly can, as long as it doesn't do anything to the illegal targets. That means that the spell is going to exile and return Nick's planeswalker just like it normally would. However, it's not going to be able to do anything to Amy's grizzly bears because that target is not legal. And so, Nick gets 100% of what he wants in this specific instance. Pretty great trick. And that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.